Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about magic, Commander, and anything else. Well, we try and drag this whole mental health thing out of the gutter it lives in. Now, today, I just want to talk about brewing decks. I've been doing a lot of that mostly because I don't have money for more cards. I've been spending most of my money on car repairs. And I'm still spending money on car repairs. I recently had to replace my alternator. That was a $1,300 repair. Because, it wasn't just the alternator. It was the alternator, the battery, drive belt. You know what I mean. I still need to get it in and get the front brakes done, but I can't do that until I pay off this last repair. Regardless, I don't really have a ton of money to be spending on cards. Which is all well and good. So I'm just kind of going through what I have and picking stuff up and being like, what can I do with this? So something I've been recently working on is a mix between a red-white equipment and red-white legendary deck with the I believe it's Mary, Squire of Rohan. And yeah, it's just legendary creatures and legendary creatures that care about equipment. And then some equipment. Because, for the most part, I have a set of swords that I wasn't using. They're just kind of sitting in a pile. And then I added a couple more to that. And the deck isn't, put together yet, but I have, a good base. And I just need to, figure out if it has enough mana rocks. And, things that care about things and removal and all that jazz. Other things I've been working on, I had a while back changed my Planeswalker control deck from Umori the Collector into Sultai colors to add blue. And it just never played like I wanted it to anymore. And so I'm working on returning that back to Umori the Collector. It is going to be waiting for a few cards because in the time since I had this deck built, there are some cards that want to make it into this deck. And again, I don't really have the money for cards at the moment. Another thing I was reworking was my Aragorn the Unifier deck. It just never played like I wanted it to. And through stuff I had on hand and stuff that I was able to get from my cousin, I was able to put that one together. And then another one I've been brewing is the one that I'm going to talk about in the next part of this. And that's Ave Progenitor Ooze, with oozes being kind of the main theme, but also the slime against humanity being not quite the central theme, but a big part of the theme. I'll go over the numbers for it when I go over the deck, and then all the things that aren't that are also going to be in the deck. So, regardless to say, I don't have the money I need to be spending on cards. And, yeah, that's kind of all I got for this part. Just things that I'm slowly working on, like Massacre Girl, Known Killer. I've been sitting on a pile of cards for that since she came out, basically. I've been working on a Gigantha the Wellspring deck, where the goal is to just play every Wooburg costed thing, or things that can just be cost, like with Gigantha and maybe a little extra mana, like Okagachi is Wooburg in 1. Primeval Spawn is Wooburg +5. Two-headed Hellkite is Wooburg +1. Things like that, but then you have things like Queen Marchesa, which is Mardu +1. Or Zergo Helm Smasher, which is Mardu +2. Or Kyodai, which is technically a white card, but it has an activation for Wooburg. And then kind of the idea for this came from a thing I saw about the Bringers. So it's where I started putting the stuff together. But I think that'll do it for this part. And when I come back, we're going to be talking about some oozes. I'll be right back. Alrighty, we are back. Now, before I get into the deck proper, we need to talk about Slime Against Humanity. Slime Against Humanity is a sorcery. It's 2 and a green, and it says create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with trample, put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard that are oozes or are named Slime Against Humanity. A deck can have any number of cards named Slime Against Humanity. I've been eyeing this card for a while, and I was debating if I wanted to go... the 3 options were like mono green, green white, or green red. And just because of what I had on hand, I decided to go mono green. So the whole deck can have any number of them. Most people see that and run like 30 to just be a deck with them. I'm running 14. Now, into the commander for the deck, I decided to go with Ave Progenitor Ooze. It is 2 green for a 2/2 ooze with Storm. Ave Progenitor Ooze isn't legendary if it's a token. So, if you did throw this in something that's actually making tokens of creatures, you don't need something that says the legend rule doesn't apply or that it makes a non-legendary token. But what we're doing with it here is just making oozes. And Ave enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other ooze you control. So that gets wonky with Storm. So Storm is, for every spell you've cast before this spell, you make a copy of this spell. So if you cast 3 Slime Against Humanities, and then you cast Ave, you get this Ave plus 3 copies of Ave. And again, oozes. There was a thought to make this deck be able to cast Slime Against Humanity for a single green mana, and that might be where a future version goes. But for now, it's mostly ramp and oozes to get a ton of oozes out. There is a way to go infinite in here with a couple of spells cast and then casting Ave. The thing that facilitates this is Food Chain. So Food Chain is an enchantment for 2 and a green, and it says exile a creature you control, add X mana of any one color where X is 1 plus the exiled creature's mana value. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells. So the way this works is when you cast Ave, you have the first Ave to sacrifice gives you 5 mana, which is his mana cost, right? But if you have cast, say, 2 Slam Against Humanities first to make the 2 tokens, and then you cast Ave, you make Ave plus 2 more copies of Ave. Then you sacrifice the regular Ave and a token Ave to make 10 mana, put Ave back into the command zone, and then you have enough mana to recast Ave. Your storm count goes up by 1, which means now you make 3 Aves, and then rinse, cycle, and repeat. And then eventually there will be something in here that just gives everybody haste. I just don't have any of them right now. The 2 that come easily to mind are the Drawbridge, which is probably a lot cheaper than the other one, which is Concordant Crossroads. Eventually, they'll make it into this deck as like a viable win condition, but for now, it just goes and makes things gummy, like the board. Now, there are a number of oozes that I wanted to get into the deck. One of the ones I want to talk about first was one of the other potential commanders. And that's if we ended up going either green-white or green-red, and that's Slurk All Ingesting. So it's 5 and a green for a 0/0 ooze. Slurk enters the battlefield with 5+1/+1 counters on it. Whenever Slurk or another creature you control dies, if it had a +1/+1 counter on it, you may put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control that has a +1/+1 counter on it. And then it has partner, which is how we would have facilitated our second color. So Slurk still works great in that combo I was just talking about, because when you sacrifice Ave to Food Chain and then your token Ave to Food Chain to make enough mana to recast him, Slurk sees that 2 creatures with counters on it dies and puts counters on the remaining creatures. So this helps you go wide and tall. And yeah, that's that. But moving into the oozes, there have been a bunch released that do kind of the things we want to do. Starting with Consuming Blob, 3 green for a star and star +1 ooze. Consuming Blob's power is equal to the number of card types among card types in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. At the beginning of your end step, create a green ooze creature token with this creature's power is equal to the number of card types in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. Do we have a ton of card types to put into the graveyard? No, but just constantly pooping out more oozes we care about, because for every ooze we have, Ave enters with more counters. For every ooze we have, we get to put counters on with Slurk. It just does lots of fun stuff. Another component to winning with a deck like this is having Trample. And there are several things that say creatures you control with counters on them have Trample. There is one that's actually an ooze, and that's Temperamental Oozewag. It is 3 and a green for a 4/4 ooze brushwag. And it has, for 2 and a green, adapt 2. And then modified creatures you control have trample. I get it's a stupid card, but it's funny. Next up, we have Bio-Waste Blob. 2 green for a 0/0 ooze. Oozes you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a commander, create a token that's a copy of Bio-Waste Blob. So, this is another one of those inevitable death things where if we have Ave and Bio-Waste Blob, we make another Bio-Waste Blob. For every Bio-Waste Blob, all oozes get +1/+1, so it also helps them survive if something is removing +1/+1 counters from them. So yeah, there's that. Next up, we have the Biogenic Ooze. 3 green for a 2/2 ooze. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 2/2 green ooze creature token. At the beginning of your end step, you put a +1/+1 counter on each ooze you control. And for 1 green, you can create a 2/2 green ooze creature token. So again, this is another way we can sink mana once we start making enough Ave tokens to just flood the board massively. Yeah. Next up, we have Predator Ooze. Green for a 1/1 ooze. Predator Ooze is indestructible. Whenever Predator Ooze attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever a creature dealt damage by Predator Ooze dies this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Predator Ooze. So again, this really shows like the slow, inexorable death that these oozes like to cause. A few more. Just Gobbling Ooze for a green. For a 3/3 ooze, you can pay a green, sacrifice another creature, put a counter on the ooze. Good with like little tokens running around. Oran Reef Ooze. 2 and a green for a 2/2 ooze. When Oran Reef Ooze enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. So again, just inevitably getting bigger. Next up, we have the Splitting Slime. 3 green for a 3/3 ooze with Monstrosity 3 for 4 green. Whenever it becomes monstrous, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of Splitting Slime. For clarification, the token has no counters and is not monstrous. So this can continually make more because you play this, you monstrous it, you put 3 counters on this, you make another version of it that's still a 3/3 with monstrous. So you can activate it again. You get another 6/6 and another 3/3. Alright, the last ooze I want to talk about is Scavenging Ooze. 1 and a green for a 2/2 ooze with pay a green. Exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Scavenging Ooze and you gain 1 life. And okay, I do want to round this out with a few non-creature cards that help show where this deck is trying to go. First up, we have a trio that make tokens. That's Slime Molding, which is X and a green, sorcery, put an XX green ooze creature onto the battlefield. The next one is Miming Slime, which is 2 and a green for a sorcery, put an XX green ooze creature token onto the battlefield where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. And Gelatinous Genesis. It is XX green sorcery, create XXX green ooze creature tokens. Next up, I want to talk about Case of the Trampled Garden. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment case. When the case enters the battlefield, you put 2 counters among 1 or 2 creatures you control. To solve, creatures you control have total power 8 or greater. And once it's solved, whenever you attack, you put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample till end of turn, so this is another way to push through damage. Next up, we have Death's Presence. It's 5 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, put X 1/1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the power of the creature that died. So again, this goes really stupid with Food Chain. And finally, I want to talk about Gutter Grime. It's 4 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you put a slime counter on Gutter Grime. Then put a green ooze creature token onto the battlefield with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of slime counters on Gutter Grime. So, again, it goes really, really well with a card that we've talked about several times today. Food Chain. But I think that's where we're going to end it. This is Oozes. And I hope maybe in the next couple of weeks things settle down enough that I can, actually get out to play some Magic. And that's all I got. So I will see you next time, and I hope you have a good one. Bye-bye!
Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulvey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.